Holy wall of Super N64, and there's like a lot of video games behind you, but welcome Mort, or Mort's Garage, or what, I have no idea what we could call you right now, so I guess Mort would just be a good starter.
Mort's the name. Yes, and it's my garage. So it's Mort's Garage is the YouTube channel and Instagram and everything, but call me Mort,
Well, it's a
please.
pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on, and honestly, like, from your videos, I didn't expect you to be this jolly, but even when you're on Pixel Game Squad's channel some of the time, that you usually are one of the most cheery and happiest people out there. Does it usually get a very stressful environment whenever you're trying to, I don't know, play video games or anything like that, or are you just happy all the time?
Well, I'm definitely human. I have my highs and lows, but I enjoy getting the chance to talk about this stuff that is just playful and fun, and there's a part of me that just lights up at the chance to do silly things and have fun and all of that. So I mean, I hope that it comes across as genuine, because nothing's worse than someone who's disingenuously happy.
Yeah, I can understand that completely, especially when a lot of YouTube personalities, they set up like a persona to be able to present themselves as somebody else, and then in the real world they are kind of a big jerk. Does it seem like that gets like a comparison to you sometimes, or do you have to show them that, yeah, this is actually me, I'm always this happy a lot of the time?
I haven't been in the YouTube game very long, but I've done a lot of music and being in bands and stuff like that. And with that, there's an element of persona that's part of, I think, so many different aspects of life. I don't know how people perceive of me too much, because I haven't had people go out of the way to say much about it. And I hope that however people perceive of me, that they're at least enjoying what's there in real life or otherwise. But um, yeah, I hope it's pretty authentic, because the one thing I will say is some of the advice I got initially from a videographer way back when was, hey, when you're in front of a camera, you kind of have to be 110% instead, or 130%. If you're normally animated, be 110% animated. And I think that can be really disingenuous if it's done a certain way. But if it's 110% of your real self, then I think that there's something about that that's can be quite good. So I don't know. It's fun because with this hobby and with all of this, it taps into a side of my personality that the rest of my life doesn't really get in the same kind of a way. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so fun, and I don't know, for me it feels healthy anyways.
Well, since you mentioned about that, how tough is it for you to be able to get in the mindset of recording for a video and then eventually editing? Does it, I guess it technically does get a little nerve-wracking considering you've got a pretty decent following already and you haven't even done 30 videos yet.
I'm humbled at the response so far. And I've been helped greatly by Retro Rick and by Riff from Pixel Game Squad, and and then I had a couple of shorts that I made that were just, one's about Blockbuster and one's about the game 40 Winks, and both of those unexpectedly have gotten over 100,000 views.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was not like, I'm making stuff because I find it interesting. I'm not necessarily going, how do I get more views? But at the same time, I think anyone who's creating something is thinking, how do I want people to see what I'm making? And I hope that with what I'm making, that I'm being smart about how I'm making it as well. So I forgot your initial question, but I trailed off there for you.
Oh, that's okay. That's one of the things, like, since I asked you about the, like, it's nerve-wracking situation, is that I get people that are on this channel, like, for example, John Riggs. I never expected to actually have a very good, civil conversation with him, considering I know how popular his channel is. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess to pretty much continue with what I asked you, is that,
Yeah.
yeah, it gets nerve-wracking to the point I forget what I say sometimes, and then you
Yeah,
basically
I
come in and fill it in.
so in the band I was in, I've since high school, since middle school, I've been playing in bands in some kind of capacity with independent music, and with that, comes experiences like, talking to, at that point it was fanzines, Or the last band I was in, we were interviewed by the local paper and some other things like and it was great. But I sang and played guitar in the last band I was in, and just got really comfortable being in front of people. And I think my personality type, there's an energy that I get from being in front of the camera because I like the fun, the fun aspect of it. So I get nervous in the sense that, I could say something that's coming from a really good place and it could be interpreted as not that. And I'll really overanalyze, how something comes out. But at the end of the day, I just trust my heart that that's coming from a real, genuine place. And if I do make a mistake with something, I pray to God that it goes okay.
And hope that there's not any sort of backlash on that. But considering, like, from the few minutes I've talked with you so far, it doesn't seem like that's gonna happen. And considering how fast your channel is growing, at honestly, you're probably gonna reach 10,000 subs maybe by right before October. Because have you expected it to get this high up because of Pixel Game Squad, or do you think it's because of the collecting aspect?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that it's interesting. The YouTube space is really interesting creatively for me. And I shared this in another interview and even on my channel. I stopped doing music because I got tinnitus, which basically is a pervasive, constant ringing in your ears. Like after you see a band play a great show and then you go home and your ears are ringing. That's what my ears do all the time. And the reason I bring that up is I needed another creative outlet that didn't affect the volume to my ears. And so I think it's really tough. Same with being in a band, actually, the creative sort of motivators, like what makes you want to create things. And what drives me with the YouTube stuff is I think a lot of my interests and tastes are centered around a style of humor that that I love, that I have a format with which to bring that out. And it's about the gaming aspect, but I'm hoping that the best compliment I get from my channel is I don't like video games, but I like your channel, because that, and I've had several of my friends say that, which, and that's really, if that's such a high praise, for what I'm trying to create, because of I think the relatability and communicableness of that, so I'm trying not to be too much about just one thing. And so if the channel grows, I hope it's organic. I don't like, Riff one time put out a post saying, check out Mort's new channel right when I started. And then Retro Rick did a room tour of my garage, and that's gotten a substantial amount of views, and people are excited about the collection. But I kind of look around here and I go like, yeah, like Metal Jesus, though, has 3 times as many games as I do. John Hancock has 5 times as many games as I do. And so I don't know how to perceive of what other are perceiving. I just hope that whatever people get from my channel, that you get something that feels good, and there's just so much garbage in the world right now, and I hope that what I'm making is not in the garbage pile, but it is something that brings levity and lightness, but also a little bit of depth into your world. And I try to do that in the way that I'm doing things, but I'm still figuring it out. And if I get to 10,000, subscribers in 5 years, great. If I get to 10,000 subscribers tonight, great. I hope that what I'm making is working for me creatively, and it gives me opportunity to do good things. That's what I want. Like I see all of this as like the Trojan horse for, okay, this is fine, collecting and all of that, but like what kind of good can we really do? And that's, I don't know. I don't mean to sound overly I don't know what the word is for it.
Preachy? Or
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah. But I mean, like in the end of my SoCal Gaming Expo video, there's a little message I dropped in the end of that. I'd love to raise money for certain causes, like mental health causes and things, but I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead of things. I'm just enjoying making videos. I'm having a blast, and I've been a part of this community for a while. So I've watched Metal Jesus and Reggie and all of these channels for years, and it's just really fascinated me with gosh, like what draws me to Happy Console Gamer, and what draws me to Pixel Game Squad, and all of these channels. And there's so many game hunting channels. Can I make something creatively that is different enough to stand out but isn't trying too hard? So I don't know. I can go on for hours about this, and I probably shouldn't.
That's okay. At least we'll be able to have extra material for the next time we do a follow-up recording. But yeah, like you said,
By the
that's...
way,
Oh.
for those people watching at home, I cannot see Kevin right now, and it's really weird because I can see myself, and so I'm tripping out because this is not how I normally have conversations with people.
Yeah,
So you could be giving me
yeah.
the strangest facial expressions, and I have no idea.
Yeah, he'll actually see the recording of it when it's like up on YouTube. But usually what I tell everybody before we start recording is that OBS is what we record this interview on, and for whatever reason, it hates Discord, so I have to, like, warn them ahead of time that I'm still here, but they can only just hear me, so this is, like, something I warn everybody I interview beforehand, so I do apologize.
All good.
Okay, so let's get into it. We had a good opener, but let's get into something that you and I talked about a little bit before we started recording this, and that is mostly on the reselling aspect side of things.
Okay.
I know that you mentioned about SoCal, which you recorded that this year. When
Yeah.
you get into the resell collecting side of things, how does that usually work best for you? Do you like interacting with the customer more, or is it mostly the transaction side, or do you just prefer like the collective side of like the community that comes out to do those events?
Well, I mean, really, it's all of those things, but in different measures. So
Hmm.
I love I love being at events for reselling primarily because I love meeting people. I love when people come to my booth and I don't, even if they don't buy something, I appreciate the conversation and the chatter. I love seeing what people get. I learn something new at every convention or trade event. Like around here, quite literally every month there's at least two buy sell trade events in the Los Angeles area, and there's just it's constant, and so it's a lot of fun because there are people that I only see in those environments, and it's nice to see them, and it's nice to hang out, um, but the financial part of it does help justify the time of it because I'm a father. I have
Hmm.
3 kids. I'm happily married to my wife of 19 years as of November this year.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. She's amazing. And so we have a beautiful family. And so I've learned this with boundaries. Anytime you say yes to one thing, you are immediately saying no to something else. So like saying yes to talk with you meant saying no to, other things that I could be doing, and that's great. But I think like if I'm going to say yes to time away from my family, then I'm saying no to being with my family. And so
Hmm.
the financial part really helps. And for me, it's not my full-time job. It's not what I spend all my time doing, but it is something that helps to justify aspects of this. And so the transaction part matters. But it's not the sole motivator. I've gone to events before where I've come home with very little, and I've gone to events before where like it was amazing,
Hmm.
and so it just and that's part of it. So if I go home with very little but I had a great time seeing people, then awesome, but if I go and I see people have fun and then there's money in the pocket, great. But there's also just a lot of avenues to resell, and I can see why it's a full-time job. And at least as of the last few years, it's been, for some people it's become their full-time job, just with how profitable it can be if you really activate on it. But that's not me.
I can understand that because I know how tough it can be to be able to run either just a regular business or dealing with family. Because especially if you have kids, you want to be able to spend as much time with them. Because that 10 years or like the first 13 goes by really quick, and it's like you want to spend as much time as possible before they leave your side, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I have triplet 7-year-olds, and
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, so there's an element of my wife's amazing when it comes to self-care. When I go to the swap meet on the weekends, she's like, "That's your time. That's your time to just brain out. And what I love about the swap meet is it engages a part of me that I don't get to engage in during the week quite so much. And in that respect, it's very cathartic. Um, but you know, and so like I've come home on some weekends and I barely found anything, but I'm like had a good walk, got to see some friends, and I feel energized for my family again, in other ways. And then and then like the last few weekends I felt like it's like I'm just gonna stay home and hang out with the family and we're gonna do family stuff. So yeah, so it's all a lot of fun, but that balance aspect is a big part of it for me.
I can understand that, especially with it just being chaotic a lot of times with schedule conflicts, but he's seeming to be able to work it out somehow, so hopefully you have like a good hobby to balance the family stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Everyone, um, I mentioned this on another interview I recently just did, but it there I need to quote the study, but I because I could be off here, but it seems that men have a more difficult time making friends more into adulthood,
Hmm.
and new friends, and so having a hobby is a great way to do that and to meet people and to be a part of something, and or being a part of a faith community or something like that. So I think that that's one of the things that is so important about this from a balance perspective is having, some people go to the bar and watch their favorite teams play. Some people, it's about music or other things. And for me, it happens at this season of my life to revolve around this fun, wild hobby of collecting way too many video games.
Especially with looking at like behind you, I've seen so many games that are in boxes, and then of course with the NES and Super Nintendo. And since I'm on the topic of that, I know that like in one of the episodes of Retro Liberty, you picked up like a variant of Gauntlet Legends for the N64 that's complete in box. So aside from just that item, and I know you're more than welcome to talk about that one too, what would you say is like one of your other favorite pieces that are a part of that video game collection you have?
Yeah, so funny you should ask. I was asked that the other night too. The My favorite piece in my video collection, there's two of them. One is and first of all, I started collecting these N64 boxes and nearly finished the whole set before 2020. So it was not something I did recently, and I collected it by trading with others, finding them cheap at the swap meet, reselling some things, selling things out of my collection I didn't want. My goal was to get every box and manual for the 64, and I'm just short two manuals, which is Transformers and Sculptor's Cut. And I'm fine. I'm not going to get them unless I find them at a garage sale for nothing. And that's totally cool. But my favorite pieces in the collection relate to some of the games that I've had in box for years. One of which is my copy of Pokemon Puzzle League, which has my brother Matt's name written on top of it. Matt's been in a couple of episodes of the show, Mort's Garage, and he did a Garbage and Gold episode and a game hunting episode. And we played Pokemon Puzzle League for hours, and just seeing his handwriting on the top of the cartridge label, that memory is so powerful for me, and it has such depth for me that, if I can only grab two games, that's one of the ones that I would grab. The other one is my original N64 copy of Banjo-Kazooie, because it revolves around a time in my family's life where we experienced a significantly traumatic, life-changing event where my mom was inches from death in a car accident.
Mm.
And when I came home to break the news to my brother about what had happened, because my dad was at the hospital with my mom, he was playing that copy of Banjo-Kazooie, and I'll never forget that. And so I don't necessarily associate the gameplay of that game with that memory, but I associate the cartridge with that memory. And so for that reason, it has a memento keepsake for me with that. That's important. Otherwise, everything in here, I'm grateful for it. I love that I've been able to find this stuff. I'm amazed at what I've been able to find, but I'm totally, like it's just, at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. But I don't. It's just interesting to think. And Kevin, I don't know if you ever think about this, but why do things get value in the first place? You know, like why weren't video games valuable for so long and then all of a sudden they've become more valuable, or comic books or Funko Pops? Like, why are Funko Pops popular? I don't get it. You know, which more power to you if you're into it. But
Hmm.
for, you know, someone would look at my collection and go, why do you like video games? You know, whatever the thing is. But I think about that kind of stuff. Like, how did this stuff go from being, I can't sell this copy of Skate or Die in box for $5 to someone paying me $30 or $40 for it? It's wild. The whole thing's wild, but I'm here for it.
I think it's the nostalgia bug that usually bites people a lot of time, because I know that it did that to some video game collectors back when I started selling stuff. That Atari was still technically popular, though it was Nintendo that I think people got to that age where they wanted to rekindle something from their childhood, and I feel like a lot of people back then just kept it private because they didn't want to be looked at as a nerd, if you will,
Yeah,
because that
yeah.
was the thing that people got bullied on, and I think that it's looked very fondly as this pastime that we cherish so much. And it's like, yes, we have responsibilities and we're much older, but to be able to just chill out, just pop in a cartridge in the console, blow into it. I don't know why you want to be that evil to do that anymore rather than just cleaning the pins. But yes, it's understandable now, and I can completely understand why.
And yet, at the same time, you know, if I wanted to play Darkstalkers on the PS1, I could
Hmm.
spend $100 plus for the long box, um, or I could go buy it in the collection that just came out on the Switch.
Oh
And
yes.
so, like, why is that though, that I would want the long box one when, if it's about the games themselves? There's, that's what I mean. Like, there, I agree with you that in a sense it's about the nostalgia, or the, you know, hey, when I play NBA Jam, I am immediately transported back to being that little kid who is playing NBA Jam. I was dreaming about NBA Jam in the middle of, you know, school, and I couldn't wait to get home and play more NBA Jam. When I pull out the game, I'm right back there.
Hmm.
um, but if it, I don't know, would I spend $500 on a sealed copy of NBA Jam that's graded? I don't know. I don't think I would. Well, I do know I would not. And I think that that's just it's just interesting. It's fascinating to me what's just observing all this, because it used to be like, oh, that's cool, and you know, it's this kind of weird thing where, you know, the conversation seems to be shifting away from the games in terms of what they mean to people, and more into what the value is of the games, and that's new over the past couple of years.
Yeah, because I know that it's been a thing for a while in, I think it's comic books and cards. And then, not that long after, it was figurines, because I know that sealed, carded figures usually get a lot of prices that are crazy, because I've got like a Super Shredder still sealed that I think I found at a yard sale for $5, and those things get like crazy prices nowadays.
Yeah.
But since
Yeah,
yeah.
toys are a whole genre that I don't understand. I know the broad rules of toys, which is anything that's older and is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Generation 1 Transformers, and certain GI Joes and Star Wars are going to have a certain amount of value. But then you go to like the Kenner Star Wars stuff and from the 90s, and you can't give that stuff away. And so there's, it's all different, but it's not just video games that have risen in value. It has been every aspect of the collectibles market over the past couple of years, and that's just been an interesting, it's just an interesting thing to observe and be in the middle of it all.
Yeah, and then there are certain people in the community, and I know that not everybody is this, but there are those that will really try to rip people off a lot of the time, and that's one thing as a seller, and I'm pretty sure you can relate to it as well, is that you want to give people the best deal possible while not trying to rip yourself off. And you can
Yeah.
understand that a lot of people don't have too much money on hand, but it's one thing where you do that, and then you see other vendors that will not give out deals, and then they try to rip other people off with like the highest amount possible.
Yeah, I think you know, this is again another kind of thought from from the other conversation I was just having with someone, but um, you know, it it seems that there are people who love the hobby, and then there just happens to be value attached, and then there's people who love the value attached, and then there's a hobby that's with it. You know, that there's and those that are coming in just for the value part are the part that, you know, is the really challenging part of this. But it's true of every market that there are bad actors, there are bad people in every corner of every part of society, and it's just part of it. But I think is just a personal habit. Number one, because I'm not reselling full time, it's not something where I have maybe the same consequences as someone else for giving certain kinds of discounts, and I feel grateful that I can do that. But but I do think that it's just a good habit personally to be in, is to kind of say, well, like, what could I give away? It might even pinch a little bit to give it away, but I think that's kind of a, you know, and I mean, I recognize that might sound insane when you look behind me, but I try to be generous where I can, and at the same time, I try to hold my ground where I can too. It's a fine dance and balance that we all do, but yeah, it's part of selling and being a part of the hobby of selling and collecting video games.
Yes, and it also be able to get stuff technically for free if you end up selling everything off, and then you've got all the video game stuff you picked up over years. So it does have its benefits, while at the same time dealing with all the negative stuff that comes along with it too.
No, I agree. I think that the fun of it still far outweighs any of the frustrating parts of it.
Definitely. Well, since you mentioned about that, I know that on Pixel Game Squad, you had game nights wherever you brought the guys in. Was
Yeah.
that technically where you got your start with Rick and Ricky and Aaron?
Riffo?
Yes, Rippo.
Yeah, so I got my start with them because I was friends with Riff on Facebook for some reason, and his profile, I think it was because of my band back then, and we kind of, our worlds collided somehow. And he had a profile picture up of him holding an NES cartridge, which, to your point earlier, people did not prominently display NES cartridges in their profile pics. It was this sort of thing of like, oh, you like Nintendo too? Oh, cool. Me too. Me too. You know, and it was more of a secretive thing, and then geek became chic, and so Aaron's got this thing on display, and I'm like, dude, I have N64 boxes. We should hang out. And after, you know, some time, we finally made the connection with each other, and it turned out we went to the same high school, albeit at, you know, he's, I think, like 6 or 7 years younger than me. But we went to the same high school. We had, you know, similar names and people that we knew, and all of a sudden there's all this just fun connection that was there, and we really hit it off really well. And Riff is a very warm and kind person, and he kind of sort of was my front door into this whole world. And I mean, I remember driving by the swap meet that I go to with my wife and seeing all the tents up, you know, years ago, and turning to my wife and going, "Why do people go to swap meets? I don't get it. Like, what's the point of that?" And now I go all the time, and it's because of Riff. So we became friends through all of that, and you know, some people you naturally hit it off with, and in others it takes a little bit of work. And Riff has not been work to hit it off with, and so I'm so grateful because of just the opportunities to, you know, do the show with him, and then for him to try some of my ideas. He would let me do, you know, the pickups videos and some other videos, and I really am appreciative of his friendship. And then, you know, I've never edited, or I had never edited a video, but it's before I started the channel. The first video I ever did was before I did the channel. I edited a video of my daughter and I going to California Adventure to go on her first loop ride.
Oh, nice.
And you know, I said to Riff, I said, like, what's the program that I should be using? You know, there's Premiere, and then there's Final Cut, and then I have since learned about DaVinci. And he said, well, if you have a Mac, Final Cut all the way, and also it's free for the first 90 days with no credit card information necessary. So I downloaded it, edited, and then I was like, oh, this could be bad news for me because I love editing, and like I'm way into it. I just love it. You know, anytime I get time to myself, I'm just like, I wonder what I can edit right now, and I'm constantly thinking of ideas. and it's a perfect outlet for that. So he kind of guided me along, and even at this stage of things has been saying like, okay, like, well, here's how you move an object on the screen, or here's a cool way to do a transition, or all of that. So he's just been a big part of all of it. Even so, I like to say that I'm sort of Pixel Game Squad, but I'm like the B Squad. I show up as the special guest every once in a while, kind of like the cameraman Chris or Andy. I'm not quite as prominent as Gabbo and Ricky by any stretch, but I'm so grateful that he's just very comfortable with letting me show up and be a part of the videos, and I've just greatly enjoyed it and really appreciate that.
I can understand that too, and I guess it's kind of like comparing back when the NWO was a thing in the '90s, that they had a NWO B team type of thing. So I guess you could technically be Pixel Game Squad B team along with
There it
whoever
is.
else could be there too.
There it is. Yeah, Pixel B Squad.
Nice. So maybe there'll
Yeah.
be a side series that they'll have on the channel. And speaking of which, as far as like being a part of like certain episodes of Retro Liberty, what would you
Yeah.
say is like one of your favorite moments that you actually were a part of that not a lot of people would think too much on, but to you, you have like a very special place in your heart on?
Well, I don't know if it was a foreshadowing of things to come, but we did a pickups video. It's probably the most recent one, and I found the game Chubby Cherub complete, or it was missing the manual, but in box. And I showed off the game on the video, and we were about to film it. And I was like, "Hey, like, let's change shirts randomly during this." And so, but don't reference it, don't notice it, just play the whole thing straight. And we didn't giggle about it or go, hey, you changed your shirt, like. And I like, to me, I love those visual kinds of things where you're watching something and you're like, did that just happen in that video? That was a lot of fun. And I love that he was like, sure, let's go for it. That was one. And then, as far as the collecting part, I really appreciated that he was willing. I knew Chris was going to bring the Gauntlet figure box to the swap meet on the day that he was there, and that was one of my favorite things to add to my collection for sure. And then maybe the other part is Jer is he's also kind of Pixel B and C Squad, like me, and Jer had a childhood copy of Bomberman: The Second Attack, which is one of complete in box and in like pristine shape, and it's one of his childhood games that he has from like high school. And he got it at a rental store for like $3 when they were selling it and getting
Wow.
rid of stuff. And he gave it to me as a gift, and at that time it was worth a lot, but it's gone up like 4 times in value since then.
Yes.
And just just the meaning behind that, because at that point, it's not value that's leading that transaction or that gift, it's just friendship that is. And that's a huge gift. That's a very valuable gift. And so being able to get that on camera, I knew Jared was going to find it at some point, but I didn't know he was going to give it to me at that swap meet. So Aaron has the camera rolling and he goes, and then Jared goes, all right, Mort. And then he pulls out the game, and I'm like, holy crap, so that was really fun.
And since you mentioned about that, as far as like friendships go, that to me is like one of my favorite aspects when you're a part of a community and you're there for like a few years and you
Yeah.
already have like tons of people that are not just only on like a Discord app or on Facebook. They are literally your own personal friends that you can still keep in contact with and
Yeah.
text just to be able to check up on them to see how you and the kids are doing or what theme park you're going to in the summer. And that to me really lasts a lifetime compared to like just doing videos. And yes, the memories are great, but the friendships I feel do last a lifetime.
It absolutely. And I mean, and at the end of the day, you're not going to remember, the grail item that you found, or what you're going to remember, the connection. I think that's what we're all ultimately built for, is for connection. And that's, at the end of the day, I will remember far more the people who were in my life than the games that were in my life. And the games might be an aspect of facilitating connection because it's part of being a community and all of that, and we're that's what drew us to it. But it's interesting, how I think we're driven as people to connect with one another. I think that's the ultimate, like, primal instinct. And so finding a hobby where you can do that, like as innocuous as video games, that's what I think is really cool. So it's wild. You don't know the reach of of what's there. I could make a video and say something, and someone goes, I remember when you did that, and it lifted me up out of having a bad day, and now and it helped me to feel better or whatever. I was just being myself, and I love that this kind of creativity that YouTube really fosters, at least for me at this point of my YouTube video making, is just really wonderful. And I love that it can encourage someone or make someone feel good, and then hopefully help them to connect with somebody else.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
if it's at a convention, and especially to be able to keep up with everybody whenever you can, because I know that life is quick and you gotta make the most of it the best way you can.
I blinked. I mean, I remember when the band started around 2010, and then I think about that. I'm like, that's 12 years ago. That's first grade through 12th grade years ago. What? How did that happen? And my kids are going into second grade, and it's just wild, and it's so true. And it's so short, and there's just so many things that I find myself making such a fear over, and a nervousness and a worry over. And then I come to find out that all of the worst case things that I thought weren't true, but what was true was the people who are with me along the way. And I'm so grateful for that.
And I think that that's what a lot of people in the community are gonna take to heart. So that, I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of my favorite bits that we actually recorded on here. So that was awesome.
Good. Good. Yeah. No, it's great. I can think of how, you know, uh, watching someone else talk about an old video game like SNES Drunk, or girlfriend reviews, and watching that, and then just kind of going, man, that brightened my day a little bit, or that took my mind off of this thing that I was ruminating on, and it's, yeah, there's something to all that, I think.
All right. Well, also to continue on with what I just said earlier, do you still do the game nights in your garage, or is that been kind of like a downtime type of a deal now?
It's been hard to put those together. Summer is a little bit more challenging just because my kids aren't in school right now, and so just having people over, setting all that up, and then just all the concerns with, not necessarily COVID, but just it's just, yeah, it's harder to pull off because of just how tired I feel right now. But it is still something that I try to do. I try, I'd say, on average, to do like a once a month, invite friends over, and use the space. And when people aren't here, oh, Kevin, it's the best vibe. There's three TVs that are on, and plus now I have an arcade one up, and we are cracking up, we're eating tacos, we're having a good time. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the games are meant to be played and enjoyed, and it's a lot of fun being able to do those nights. So I still try and do them around once a month or so. But just, it depends on my energy level, to pull it off, and not wanting to burn out my wife or anything like that, because if I'm making dinner for everyone or whatever, it ends up being a burden that gets put on her. So
And it's all good there. So it's
yeah.
good that you still do that whenever you can, because I know that those type of parties are usually the best, especially when there's not any drinking or any drugs involved. Because video games, I think, really does cope with that. Because I know that it is technically addictive whenever you get into a really good game and it's like you just can't stop, and then you realize it's almost midnight and you gotta get some sleep, you know?
Yeah, or the sun's rising.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah. I do love when I find a good narrative driven game, and it's hard to put it down because I just got to know what happens next. That's one of the things that keeps me up, is not necessarily, and then the psychology behind the just one more round, of like a Call of Duty deathmatch, or Halo, or whatever the soup du jour of multiplayer games may be. And so yeah, I think that it's hard to lose track, but the consequences are bigger, than for me now than they were when I was 30 or 20.
Oh, definitely. I can understand that completely, considering I'm just now in my mid 30s, and I've got so much stuff I've got to edit, and then
Yeah,
also selling stuff through Whatnot, and just also working a side job because I edit for people as well on the side too.
that's awesome.
But yeah, I know how tough that can be for somebody nowadays.
Yeah.
Alright, so I guess the only other thing I was gonna discuss about before we got to our final segment, if you weren't doing video game collecting, I know that this is gonna be a tough one for anybody to answer, considering it's like, well, it's the best hobby ever, I don't know what else I'd be doing. What would you be doing if you weren't collecting video games?
Yeah, I really that's a hard one to answer. I don't know. I used to collect a lot of movies. I'm a huge movie guy. Like and I love talking about movies. I used to be a film critic for this website that's no longer in existence. And I would get to talk with the people who made the movies, and I would get to, do reviews for the films, and I love doing that. And it was a hobby thing on the side for sure. It was not like a full-time job or anything, but it was so much fun. And I had a really massive movie collection, but now I basically stream everything, and I've kept the discs of the collection that I have, but I don't really put a lot of stock or value into the cases or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm glad I kept my Simpsons ones because none of those are edited. But I also, I think at some point that was there, but video games have a different value in collectability because there's, when a film is done, it's done, and the new transfers and the new technology to make the films, look even more film-like or in higher definition, benefits and also can, not benefit a film. But yeah, I think that would be it. I probably would just make more content, to be honest. I've thought about starting like instead of Mort's Garage, doing like Mort's World YouTube channel where I just review films and go that direction. Because movies grab me in a way that make me think about life and God and politics and relationships and all of those things in ways that video games haven't had the same pull on me for, and that's fine. Gaming has its own, aspect of it that I love, but films for me are, when I find someone who loves the same movies that I do, we can talk for hours, and then we're not talking about just the scenes. We're talking about what the scene means, and then what that draws out of us, and all of that. So that would probably be. I might find myself back into movies, but the last thing that I bought was there was a complete set of Federico Fellini movies on the Criterion Collection, and I bought that. Those are Italian films, and he makes everything from very realistic, films to very bizarre, surrealist movies, about dreams and the unconscious and all this stuff. And I'm like, ooh, I'm in. I'm just so curious. So, and just straight bizarre stuff. But just a really interesting filmmaker. I could go on and on about this stuff for a long time, but I know we're talking about gaming primarily.
Oh, that's okay.
Those I might find myself back doing something more with movies, but I think just I don't know if I'd be collecting as much as I'd be putting more time into creating, and I think that's what I hope. I've said this before, but I'm the guy that when you come over to my house, there's inevitably a point where we're sitting around a TV and we'll put YouTube up, and we'll be showing each other things that we think are funny, and we're going back and forth, having like YouTube roulette where we're like, well, have you seen this? Well, what about this SNL skit? Or what about this stand-up comic? Or what about this thing? And I love that. I hope that's in my channel, that people are like, oh, that was really funny, and that it brings that out of people too. I feel like when people watch my channel, we're sitting together and I'm going, don't is this funny? I think this is funny. I like this scene in Waiting for Guffman or this Wes Anderson movie, or my constant and unending obsession with the Arrested Development references.
Or Harry and the Hendersons, because I know that that doesn't get brought up as much, and that's one of my favorite movies that I watched when I was a kid.
I've never seen it. I've never seen
Oh,
Harry
it's
the
so
Hendersons.
good. It's
I will watch it.
literally it's a Sasquatch that lives with a family, and he's got one of the best laughs you ever hear in film. He's on a
That's John
couch.
Lithgow, right?
I think so.
Okay.
It's been a while since. Oh wait, the guy
Or maybe
that's
Charles.
from Third Rock from the Sun or whatever
Uh,
they're
yeah, that's
aliens.
John Lithgow, and then because I always confuse that with Beethoven, and Charles Grodin, I think, is the guy's name. So
Oh yeah, I think so. But yeah, I just remember
I'm gonna look this up right now.
I just remembered the couch scene where he's laughing at television that's playing, and it's like that plays in my head a lot of the time.
Okay. Yeah, now I'm looking this up because I want to know about Harry and the Hendersons. Yeah, I think it's John Lithgow.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Yep,
to go
Harry and the
over here.
Hendersons. John Lithgow, 1987.
Yay! Actually, year I was born. Cool.
Hey, there it is. I
I
love it.
I knew there was significance with that film in me, but anyways, we pretty much talked for a good while, but it's time to get to our final segment that we like to end on. That is called the 5 count. And for anybody that new is watching, it is our segment we like to highlight for the person we're interviewing. 5 content creators, whether it be on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, or Twitter by chance, that people should check out that you recommend. So, the floor is all yours.
So there's a lot. I want to give a uh, an an obvious mention to Pixel Game Squad, because I think Riff's editing has been something that has really shaped a lot of the way people think about these kinds of videos, and the way that the Game Chasers tell stories. I think is a pretty obvious one, especially in game collecting. I mean, they pioneered this whole genre of YouTube, as far as I'm concerned. But as far as content creators that like I will instantly click on, so I'm gonna start with Retro Gaming Pandemic, and the reason that I
Yes.
like them is because I think that they're a small channel, they're a young channel in the sense that they've just been going for about a year. I think they're doing things graphically and image wise that other channels I think have a lot to learn from, and it's every time I watch it I'm like, gosh darn it, like how did you do that? That looks awesome. And so I'm gonna say them, and then just in starting my channel from day one, they've been like, dude, what's up, more, and they've been so supportive to me. So I always want to give them a shout out. Same with, I mean, gosh, there's so many others. Let me see if I can go to my subscriptions though, because I don't want to miss anybody.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, oh, okay, here's a good one. Have you heard of the band The Darkness before?
I have not. Was that somebody you interviewed for Dark Souls, I think?
No, that's the silent comedy.
Oh,
Awesome
okay.
band.
I gotcha.
Yeah, but The Darkness wrote their big song years ago is I Believe in a Thing Called Love, which is one of the wildest, craziest music videos ever made of all time. You got to watch it, but you couldn't tell if they were parodying like 80s glam rock or if they were like taking it seriously. And so the chorus is I believe in a thing called love. Just listen to the
Yes.
beat of my heart. Yeah. Their singer has a YouTube channel called Justin Hawkins Rides Again, and what I love about his channel is it is so refreshing to find voices that are aggressively non-cynical. And so he has a segment called Be Nice where stuff that people just will dunk on over and over again, and he'll like try and find something positive about it. But he's such an amazing musician. He can hear something by ear, and then he'll pause the guitar and go, "Yeah, oh yeah, they're doing this." And he highlights interesting music, and I found bands that I didn't know existed because of him. And he's just a very funny, entertaining person to watch, which is a huge deal. So
Nice.
that's going to be one of mine. The other one I'm going to reference here, I think, oh gosh, there's so many people. I'm going to feel bad that I'm not referencing them. I love you, Phoenix and Retro Rick and Right Way and JRPG Life, but I'm going to also say the Punk Rock MBA. That's Finn McKenty, and he and I grew up around the same era. He was in Seattle, and I was in the Los Angeles area, and we both have this mutual language about hardcore music, bands like Snapcase and Strife, and then for me, Unashamed and Focused, and what was this subgenre of hardcore called Spirit-filled hardcore,
Hmm.
and I think the way that he talks about the music industry and music in general is just worth listening to. So bands that I don't really do anything for me, like Korn or Slipknot, he'll still talk about them in a way that's like, hey, this is just an interesting thing about them, and I'll be like, that is interesting, you know. And then you'll talk about bands that I really am interested in, and it's all good. So he's a great one. Let me see what else. I really don't want to look at my list of subs and then later go like I should have mentioned them. Um, I think people know this channel really well, but I want to give special mention to NES Complex. I know that he's a
Oh,
huge
yes.
channel. However, what I like if the gaming historian is PBS, NES Complex, his writing and humor I think is great, and finding stuff that is well written is difficult. And so though they're both doing expansive, very involved historical references on things within the video game industry, the way that gaming historian and NES Complex tell stories about the video game history really elevates it beyond like this, like Tetris. Excuse me, I had no idea about Tetris and the backstory on Tetris, and that there were political elements to it and all of this stuff. I mean, that's gaming historian, but for Complex, watching him tell the story of Super Mario Brothers 2, which is fantastic, or other major huge franchises, and then learning like how culturally it meant one thing over here, but then when you brought it to the States, they had to translate that culturally in a different way to us. And because he's a teacher, I think he has a way of delivering content that makes me feel like I'm learning and engaged, but he's so entertaining. So I just really think that Complex just has a really excellent way of doing things. I think if he uploaded more, he could probably find himself doing this with more time than he would wish to, because I think his content's just that good. Um, my favorite and most inspirational channel, though, of all the channels, and I love Pixel Game Squad. I've talked about them, but I'm a little biased there. Number one by far is Girlfriend Reviews. I
Oh,
think
wow.
Girlfriend Reviews is they are they so they do amazing work, and they're a huge channel. I think they have 1 million subscribers. So I'm not saying anything that someone doesn't know. But what I love about them is that there's a sophistication in their writing and a humor in their writing, and they have such well-crafted videos. It's not just, yeah, this game was cool, and my boyfriend played it, and I thought it was hard. It's like there's real thought and depth to it. The way that she talked about Death Stranding, for example, I was like, at the end, once they get to the conclusion at the end of that video, I was cracking up during the video, but then I was like sitting there pinned to my seat going, "Oh my gosh, like that was huge." Or I've shown their Star Wars, breakdown before to people who have no interest in Girlfriend Reviews, because I think the way that she talks about the hero's journey and how that's a stolen narrative archetype that is used, and all of that is so deep, and yet she's making jokes about Jar Jar Binks, candy, where you literally suck on the tongue of it. There's like stuff like that just the jokes just hit so well. And then I think, and I'm learning this for myself, the way that they do film clips and the way that they turn them into transformative properties, or whatever the phrasing is excellent, because they take the way that they use film clips enhances their story. It's not like Family Guy, where it's like a random thing off on the side, and the way that they interweave that into the channel is great. So I like that you don't have to like video games at all, and you can love Girlfriend Reviews, and because of just the way that they tell the story. They remind me of this show called Petros and Money, which was I don't know if they're still around, but I used to have a very long commute to work, about a little over an hour each way, and I would listen to Petros and Money, and they've primarily focused on sports. Now, I appreciate sports, but I don't know much about sports. But I loved listening to them because they were so funny and so fun with how they delivered the content, and they made you feel like, hey, it doesn't matter if you like or don't like the stuff, you're just gonna have a good time. And so, in that respect, that's the tonal goal of my channel is that whether or not you care about the video games, you're probably going to learn a few things, because I usually do mini reviews of games in my channel. But you're probably going to be hopefully entertained by the way that some of the jokes are told, or the lightness of it, or the tone of it. And so, and that for me is creatively is one of the my favorite compliments is, when people say, hey, this meant something to me emotionally, but then more, but I also love when people say, I don't care about video games, but I look forward to watching what you're going to make next. And that's so fulfilling personally. So that's my five. I know I picked big channels in there, but shout out to Mr. Rightway, shout out to Retro Rivals, shout out to all the other great channels that I love to watch, and anyone I'm forgetting, please don't be mad. I love you, but
Don't come
yeah.
out with pitchforks at a convention while you're vending. So that's
Well,
good.
if you do come out with a pitchfork, let's throw some steak on it over a barbecue and break bread together, and we'll solve our differences.
And get a bonfire going, especially the ones that are at beaches. I always like doing those a lot of time.
That's
So
it.
that's yeah, that is it. Cause we almost reached the hour mark of the recording, and that's kind of what I was expecting this would actually get to. So
And go
thank
more.
you. Well, this was a pleasure, Mort. Thank you very much for coming on. I know that it was on short notice, and I'm pretty sure you were really busy, so thank you for pushing us into your schedule, whatever you were working on right now.
Late right now, so I appreciate that. And then truly, Kevin, I'm honored to be asked any of my thoughts at all and to be a part of your channel. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's not a problem. Like I stated before, we'll have to do a follow-up interview sometime in the future. Maybe it won't be that long, but we'll have to wait and see. But once again, Mort, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, Kevin.